been different since you came back from Italy, though.
What do you mean?
You're just different. Just different.
Italy changed you, man.
Italy changed you, bro. What's up, everybody? Super sorry for the delay in getting another episode out. My name is Ian Douglas.
I'm Todd Dollery.
And we are the Spinning Pinion Podcast. Today we are talking about practice. We talking about practice? Practice is something that's commonly misunderstood, and we're going to explain a little bit more about how to get the most out of practice and actually get better from it. Let's jump into it.
Let's do it.
Victory's calling, it's racing time. The spinning pinion takes the crown. Fast and furious, round and round.
Oh, God.
The speed's dominion. Welcome to the world of the spinning pinion.
All right, guys, welcome back. We are here today to talk about practice. So, Todd, I think something that's really important for people to understand is that just like practice alone isn't necessarily going to positively impact your racecraft, your speed, just your skill with the slot car. Like, what do we mean when we say that practice alone isn't going to help you necessarily get faster?
I think there's probably two approaches to it, right? So I think, a lot of times we'll tell people that, it's good to just go and get laps, get comfortable with the car, get comfortable with the track, and that's good to a point. Where I think people probably run into trouble with maybe not maximizing what they could with their practice, or even potentially harming their performance, is that they're chasing that beep, right? They're chasing that lap time, and people tend to practice on the fast lane, and they want to run fast times, and there's no purple on the Cunningham track. But people are practicing for lap times and maybe not practicing their race pace and getting comfortable with the pace they're going to drive the car at. They may not be practicing across all of the lanes, gaining not just a comfort across all of the lanes, but seeing how their car responds across all of the lanes. And I think that's really a big one, because I've seen people show up, and get a surprise when they get in the gutters and their car doesn't, handle the same as it did in some of the middle lanes. But I think beyond that too, like working on ways to improve even just certain sections of a track, right? How you're approaching really tight turns or working on braking later. I think you can practice those things more intentionally and improve your driving, far more than being at a track and just trying to crank out fast laps, like qualifying laps, basically.
So, I mean, I think you kind of alluded to something there that is a critical point to bring up, which is that there are actually different types of driving, right? Like a fast person doesn't necessarily just drive fast all the time, 100% out or all out. And I think that's a fairly common misconception, that when people are starting out, they, maybe they just think that the fast guys are just driving 100% all the time and they're just better at driving 100%. But the reality is that there are actually different types of driving. What would be like, how would you classify those different types of driving?
I mean, you obviously can just have like shakedown, probably effort levels, which is something I would say maybe like below 80%, where you're just driving a car around to test like functionality, making sure it's not rubbing, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like when you first get a
Installation
car on the
laps.
track. Yeah, exactly. But most of practice for me anyway, and I think it's probably the same for you, is done at generally what I consider to be race pace or thereabout, which is probably about 90% of the maximum pace that I can actually crank out with that car.
Yeah.
And what you're working on when you're doing that, right, is finding a comfort level in that pace that's not over your head, and it's allowing you to work up to those higher levels and start to feel where the edges are on a car before you get there. We always talk about a car being polite and giving us feedback and all of that, but part of that too is kind of allowing it to be in that range to give you feedback rather than just cranking the car super fast until it's just coming off, right?
Yep.
So, I think race pace is definitely a big one. That's probably the bulk of my practice laps. I'm not coming off a lot, hopefully. And, it's really just getting a feel for the car and the various points, and maybe even just trying to push it in certain points, but not like a whole fast lap.
Yeah.
Um, and then you've got kind of, um, I guess that's probably an in between, right? Like being able to push certain parts of the track. I think when you get a little more advanced in your racing, you are not just focusing on like an entire lap time, but you may focus on certain sections where you know that you are really comfortable pushing the car and you can push um, your opponents if you get in a situation where you're racing side by side. And then I think the top level, right, is trying to practice for your qualifying laps. Um, and that's kind of your all out pace. But again, you're never going to get a good qualifying time if you're just trying to full on, you know, uh, take every turn completely all out and coming off a whole bunch. That doesn't really get you anywhere. Um, when you're practicing, what areas or what range, I guess, do you think about when you think about your paces?
I think that what you've talked about is pretty accurate. I think that there's kind of installation laps where you're just going out and you're checking the car to make sure nothing rubs. And you traveled, but I feel like you have the same cup. I don't understand.
It's
Did
a
you
different
take it on
cup,
a
but it
plane?
is an equally large cup.
Oh my god. So Todd is actually back in Indiana, right? Right now?
Yep. I'm in the home of the Indy 500.
Literally, the home of the Indy 500 has a couch, a beige colored
Yeah.
couch. Yep. So in terms of practice, I would say that like I run installation laps, which is, you just take the car around, you're making sure that it's not going the wrong direction. It's not doing anything weird. It's not chattering. Hey, it happens,
We
man. It
we've all
happens
done
to the
it.
best
I've
of
done it
us.
more times than I care to admit.
Exactly. And then there's kind of a step up where you're just building up to maybe that 90%. And then, honestly, when I practice, I generally will not practice qualifying laps. Um, I will generally practice up to that like 90-95% to where I'm pushing it. But to your point, it's race pace, right? Like you're trying to find this sweet spot to where you can push as fast as possible, but you still have a margin. And I
Yeah.
think that that's where I'm trying to practice. And I think that that's the key area here that we're trying to educate about is that like no one's out there just running 100% all the time. Like you can't really win a race at 100% because it's just super untent. It's really difficult to maintain that. And so when I'm practicing at that 90-95%, I'm trying to look at the lap times, but not in a way that I'm looking for the speed. What I'm looking for is consistency, right? And I think
Mhm.
there's a little bit of a thing there where people are looking at lap times and just wanting to see that clock go faster. But we all know somebody like that that's just like clicking off 3 laps. They're like, oh, this, it's super fast, but then they come off. Um, like, how do you think that? Where do you think the lap time stuff comes in? Like, do you think that it's important to look at lap times? Do you think it's important to feel comfortable and get the edge of the car figured out? Like, I guess what I'm trying to ask is lap time more important or is racecraft more important and being able to put in those laps consistently and not come off, you know?
That's a hard one to answer because they're both equally important, right? Racecraft doesn't matter if you're out there pushing, you know, slower laps than you're capable of, right? So you could probably finish a race without coming off driving 80%, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not going to be your best performance.
No.
Um, so I think it's kind of finding that comfort zone where you're not pushing over your head, but you are comfortable with the car. You're feeling out where the edge is. And for me, if I'm practicing at race pace, I may start working on individual turns to see like how hard I can push a certain turn. But really, you need to be focused on where's that race pace that I'm comfortable, where it feels comfortably fast,
Hmm.
but I'm not racing all the way at the top, right? Because you want to be able to do a race where feasibly you could go through the whole race without coming off. If you're racing at 100% all the time, I would venture to say that's almost impossible to finish an
Yep.
entire race like that. Like you will come off. It's going to kill your confidence. You're going to feel like, you're messing up. And that's not a recipe to get the end result that you want. And I think that part of the process, we have plans to do a whole episode on racecraft and how to approach, a successful race. But I think that understanding how do you get to that before you start crafting your race plan is really important. So finding that pace where you're not over your head, where you're comfortable starting to feel out the edges of the car, and honestly working up to it as well. So you may not be at that 90% right away. I liken it to when I was, learning to play uh, songs on bass, right? So like when I played in a band, you would like play the parts with the metronome like painfully slow, painfully slow, and get the timing like perfect. And then
Hmm.
slowly speed it up and slowly speed it up and slowly speed it up until you were doing it at full pace. But when you did that, right, that full pace didn't feel all that difficult or fast because you already had
Yeah, the
that
reps.
you
Yeah.
had that ingrained in you. So I think that's definitely applicable to slot cars too, right? Especially when you get into like some of the faster classes. Think like scale auto cars when we put the latex or the Lexan interiors, the latex interiors, Lexan interiors inside of them.
Those
Like those
naughty
cars
scale auto
were,
cars.
yeah, those cars were so fast that you really had to like work into the timing because you were already at the
Yeah.
turn, like right when. Um, but I think that it's applicable to slower paces than that. Um,
I
to
like.
part of your original question though about like the times, I think where people get kind of obsessed with the times is obviously it's a point of comparison with other people around you. Everybody
Sure.
wants to say they've run a fast time. Like that feels good, right? Like where I think people kind of go wrong with that, or where I see it as a failing, is like people kind of tattoo that on their forehead metaphorically, where it's, this is a 6-1, I'm running 6-1s or I'm running
It's a
six
6-1
O's.
car.
And
Yeah.
you've run like a few 6-0s when you're just thrashing the car. And
Sure.
that's not that pace. Um, and it doesn't do you any good to like reach and consider that your race pace, because that just sets you up to fail.
Yeah, totally. I think that that six, like, let's just say you run like 3 6-0s on this track in practice, but everything else is like a consistent like 6-1 or 6-2, low 6-2. Like that's really the car, right? Like what you can do consistently, lap after lap after lap. That's really that's the thing that you're trying to establish. You're not trying to necessarily tune a car for that single lap pace. You're trying to, at the end of the day, we don't qualify. It's racing, right?
Right.
It's not just like you just qualify for that one lap pace. We race for 200 laps or whatever it is. So it's really about getting that lap time, lap after lap after lap, and making every lane count. And so another thing that you had mentioned was attacking certain corners and trying to work on certain corners. Would you say that like what you're trying to do is turn your weak lanes into your strong lanes, where like the hardest corners you're trying to really pound that one corner and figure out exactly how to take that corner correctly? Like what's your approach there?
I think it can be twofold, right? Like, and it's probably a range there. So at first, you may be working on corners that are like a weak corner for you. So thinking up the Electric Dreams track, like the hairpin on black. I know a lot of people struggle with that. The top, I don't know what you always have like different names for these sections of the track that I don't. To
The
me,
Wizzy
it's the
Wiggle.
sec. Yeah, that. it's a very sharp turn, and I think where, on
Yeah.
turns like that, where it's one that if you don't approach confidently, you're almost
You're
guaranteed
losing
to,
time.
yeah, you have to just like have that feel down and just not even think about it.
Yep.
And that happens with practice and intentionally practicing approaching that turn. And I mean, there's a bunch of them on Black Lane on the Electric Dreams track. So like Black at the end of the straight. I still have like
Yeah.
vivid memories of Marco in my like second month of racing there, taking my controller and like setting my brake really high and driving the car. And he's like, drive it like this. Don't touch the brake. Super heavy brake. And he's sitting there like watching me and he's like, brake later, not late enough, brake later, like right at the end of the turn. It was like it was like a
Yeah.
scene out of a movie, like brake later. He was
Yeah.
he was there telling me, basically like take it later, later, later. And that's the kind of stuff that actually gets you to that faster lap time, right? Like when you start to apply that to a whole lap, then, right? Like you've worked on that one turn, but now when you're coming around to that turn every time in that lap, you know how to brake late in that turn and carry the exit speed. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking that one is specifically, it's so important, right? Because you're carrying speed up the S's, and it's just working that one turn.
Yep.
And that kind of stuff I think is where um being intentional about what you're practicing, about what you're preparing for, is really helpful. And later on, I think you're going to start to work as you hone your racecraft, as you improve, you're going to start to work on what turns you can actually attack, right, and
Sure.
push people. But I think at first that's not really where people's focus should be, right? It should be at working turns that you struggle with. Um, it's one of the most uncomfortable things about practicing, right? Is you need to work on the things that you kind of suck at.
Yeah.
And um, for me, I can remember, what we're going to get into this a little bit more, but talking about working on different lanes. And so like the outer lanes at Electric Dreams, after my first year, I had this, did my little spreadsheet. I'm looking at times and I'm like, I suck. I'm losing so much time on the outside lanes. And
Yeah.
I just said, all right, for the next 2 months, I'm not going to be on anything other than white and red. When I go there, I'm not going to let myself drive on any other lane. We didn't have any races at the time, so it was easy to just focus on that. And I just made myself sit there and try to find the speed on those lanes and where I was leaving time on the table.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think, there's a range there of how to approach it, but um, at the end of the day, you're kind of breaking things down into specific sections, thinking about them with intent, and you know putting the reps in.
Yeah. I think there's actually 2 points there that I thought about. One is totally tangential. One is actually on that topic. So I'll say both. One is having somebody watching you and giving you feedback. That's a
Yep.
really big one. And the second one is when you are I think that this was going to be my I think this was going to be my point, but I was thinking about when you are attacking and driving hard and you're driving, like if you are driving 100%, you are actually driving at the limit of the car. And so it's also sending you signals that might not be accurate. So if I'm going out there and I'm driving 100% during practice, that car might look really, really loose. It might look really bad. It might chatter, and I think part of practice is, to what you said, understanding the limit of the car and your limit and kind of meshing them and
Yeah,
understanding where you two can live together and not, upset one another. Um, but in terms of the having somebody watch you, I think that's super critical. And even
for sure.
you do it for me, I do it for you. I
I
think
can
that
think
even
of
like
one. I mean, with Herman, right? And Herman's been driving
mhm,
slot cars for longer than I've been alive, probably. And
that's factual. Yeah,
that is factual. And
it is
at the
factual.
NSR race, I think it was, I'm watching him driving around, and I told him, "You're look perfect. You're getting on the throttle about 6 inches too soon out of every turn. And that one little change chose entirely how the car looked going around the
Yeah.
track because he was being more patient and the car got faster because he's being more patient and not trying to uh overdrive the car. And that's one of the things where we get into that whole like slow is fast, fast is smooth, or slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Is that what it
Nailed
is?
it. Nailed
Nailed
it.
it. Yeah, totally. Um
Nailed it, bro.
you were just holding those there for that,
I
waiting for
was.
me to mess up. But it's you never get to that point if you're trying to thrash the car. Like that's
Yeah.
not going to get you. It's actually going to end up getting you a slower lap time probably. Um, it just
Can
might
I?
take you a bit to get there when you're doing it the smooth way, right?
Yeah. So that's actually a funny thing. So like when I'm qualifying and I'm grateful that I have the opportunity to be in Q3 most of the time with you. And Q3 at Electric Dreams is longer, right? It's like a 3 minute session. So you're just up there for 3 minutes. And I often find that as I'm trying to approach that 100% mark, my lap times just drop. And so for me, sometimes I take a step back and I just take a breath, I stop, I collect myself, and then I start back again and just try to be really intentional with every corner, with every breaking point. I try to be very smooth and be within that comfort zone of the car. And that's really where I think that repetition of that 90%, 90, 95%, because sometimes going slower is faster, right? Like
Yeah.
driving smoother, driving slower, being more intentional is actually faster. And so that's something where, I see people practicing at 100%. And again, you're never racing at 100% because
Yeah.
it's totally unsustainable.
You would never be able
So
to race at some of those qualifying laps you've done, like when you're really focusing on every single turn,
yeah,
like how you there's no way you could race a whole race at that because no one can humanly focus on every single turn at that degree of accuracy. It's
yeah,
just not possible. You don't drive that way.
no,
And I think that's something that people should really take to heart, right? Is you need to find your smooth pace and I think be maybe accepting of where that pace is and putting that practice in, that pace will start to drop on its own as you gain comfort, work on your weak points. Think back to like slot at 2023 when was it about 2 months before the race? I didn't think the cars were going to do faster than like a 6.4 because that's all I could run at the track. And you told
yeah,
me no, they can go faster. And I don't see how. And that just like through gaining comfort with the car, obviously making tuning improvements, like it
yeah,
just slowly chipped down, chipped down, chipped down. And that's where you make those improvements. You're not going to suddenly magically gain, 2 or 3 tenths in um, maybe even one practice session, right? Depending on
sure.
where you're at in that. But things happen gradually over time, and a lot of times you'll find speed in ways that you didn't fully expect, right? It just kind of happens as you gain comfort, and
Yeah.
um, that's kind of the place you want it. That's when you're really ready to show up and race and put in a good race performance because you're so comfortable with the pace of the car that you can just click those laps off.
Yeah, and you mentioned something early on, which was about the spreadsheet that you keep. And just to give people an understanding of that, Todd maintains a spreadsheet of race results, which has like basically average lap time and complete laps, and I think fast lap on each
It's
lane,
not fast lap.
right?
It
Okay,
has basically just like the number of laps you did and the average pace
the
for each
pace.
lane. But I go through the broadcast and I look at like the what Lapmaster estimates the partial laps at. So it assigns them to the lane that partial lap was actually done on, which kind of gives a much more accurate look at your pace. But I started doing that for myself and slowly was just like sharing that spreadsheet with people. Um, and I think it helped me a lot knowing where my weak points were. You kind of have an idea, but you're not always totally sure of the magnitude.
Yeah.
And if you're not paying attention to it and like measuring it, the whole like corporate America thing, what gets measured gets managed. Um, like, if you're not looking at that, you may not feel like you're actually making progress, right? But you could see the average times drop and how you
Hmm.
compare to other people. A lot of times I'll look at like the spread from each gutter and what the differences of those times are as kind of a gauge of like, okay, how consistent am I across
Yeah.
lanes compared to, the top guys. So at the time I was really comparing to Rick because Rick had a very good even spread across um, all the lanes. And I've helped other people with that spreadsheet, showing them like, hey, you need to live on red for a month. And I've said that to people, like, you need to stop running your favorite lane and having
Yeah.
to run fast lap times, live on
It's
red and learn to get comfortable on it and learn to get comfortable driving it fast. And you're going to be better for it.
yeah, I think that it's a pretty solid indicator. Like having that sheet of your average pace, I think really shows who's who's really winning races and where, right?
Yeah.
Because if you just look at the cumulative total, you might see that like the race was a 3 lap margin, but maybe two of them you gained on red or somebody else gained on black or whatever. And so you really know like what are my strengths? Let me lean into those. What are my weaknesses? Let me practice those, right? Like where are the ways that I'm doing well? Let me get exceptional at those. And the ways that I'm doing badly, let me get better at those, right?
Yeah.
And then knowing what your strengths are so that you can go out and create a game plan where we're going to talk about racecraft at some point where you build a strategy around what am I good at, what do I want to use as my advantage, and then building a race structure around that. I mean, like picking the right lane and that kind of thing.
Yeah. But I think that also helps your mentality in the race too, right? If you've done a lot of laps on the slow lane in the gutter, you know what a good pace is on that lane.
Yeah,
Doesn't
sure.
matter that, other people are going faster than you. You know, obviously you know that you're on the slow lane, but if you're not really sure where that pace is, it's really easy to fall in the trap of trying to chase people. And that's where things just really start to go completely wrong in a race when you're trying
Yeah.
to be on the slow lane chasing people. And um, if you know that when you're on that lane, you're running a good pace for that lane, it's much
Yep.
easier to sit there and just hammer out those laps and know like I'm staying on, I'm hammering out good laps. Like I know that this is going to be better than when everyone else comes through this lane. Because if you don't look at it afterwards, you don't feel that in the race. You don't, you may not sit there and think like, oh, I just gained 2 laps on the field
Sure.
because you're on a slow lane. You look at it later and you realize, oh, I gained 2 laps on the field on red.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's those are those little things, as you get into a race. And practicing those things is how you get to that point of being able to feel comfortable with them on race day.
I completely agree. I think that sums that up pretty well. I think that was a good closing one-liner there. I did want to bring up one thing that we have been blessed with something to test. Um, I've been sending Todd photos of this, but we are going to be bringing it to the Slot Nationals, and obviously, Todd, you will be using it a little bit to try it out. Herman's already tried it and thinks it's very cool. But this is the Plus One controller. It's the DFC02 Pro, and this thing is pretty freaking cool. It is has muscle memory. It has model memory. Like, yep, it has muscle memory. It drives for you. But it's very cool. It's got curve, brake, sensitivity. You can set the drive frequencies and stuff. It's a really cool controller. So we're going to be doing an in-depth review of that. It will take some time because obviously Todd needs to have a swing in it. I need to have a swing in it. I haven't been at a slot car track more than one time in the last 2.5 months. So yeah, I know. Yeah. What am I
You're an
even
RC,
doing?
you're an RC racer now. I mean, I don't
Yes, I
know.
am. Yes, I am.
We're gonna boot you off this podcast, and me and Herman are gonna take this over.
That's all right. I just doubled my race fleet of RC cars. So this month. Don't don't tell Ashley.
This is the worst way to keep secrets, is mentioning them on a
She doesn't
podcast.
watch the podcast. She doesn't watch the podcast. She has better things to do with her life, like, you know, pull her hair out or do anything except watch this show. I don't know.
Oh man.
Anyways, so the next topic we are going to cover is how to read rules and understand how those rules dictate what car you should choose and how you should build the car. Did I say that right?
Yeah. I mean, to go a little into the subtitle or
Weeds.
whatever, how do we approach reading a rule set, deciding how that dictates, car choice, parts choice, all sorts of things, and how do we kind of follow through that process to what we choose to race on race day?
Yep. Couldn't agree more.
And then I think we probably want to update everyone as far as like timing of how our episodes are going to be coming out in the future. Um,
Who knows?
I'm sure it's obvious to everyone we've had a little bit of a delay in getting these episodes out. We are obviously two busy people. I have my son, so it's we've got stuff going on. So
We're figuring
we are
it
going to
out.
try to hit our goal now is to hit every other week, releasing episodes every other Wednesday. And we're hoping that we can stick to that pace and that'll be a little
Yes.
bit more sustainable for us. So,
Yeah.
bear with us as we're trying to figure this out and kind of incorporate it into our day-to-day lives. But we really appreciate all your support and love the questions and everything that still come through on all the past episodes. So keep that coming. It's really great to get that kind of feedback and interaction with you guys. So looking forward to more of it.
Yep. And I hope to fill the gaps there. Obviously we wanted to do every week, but I think just in terms of the amount of time that it takes, it's just not really sustainable for us right now. But I will try my best to fill those gaps with shorts and maybe small tutorial videos. And we'll really have the podcast be kind of like the talking point of like what's on our mind, how can you think differently about slot cars and getting better, and really teach more of the concepts of how to get faster.
And obviously, as some of the comments have hit on, we do want to get into doing some more in-depth stuff, some more hands-on stuff, and showing you guys things like how do we true tires, or how do we, fit a guide.
That's all we do. That's actually all we do is just true tires.
Pretty much. It's like 90% of
G25s.
it. But those things obviously take a little bit more filming time, editing time, all of that. So bear with us. We really want to get that stuff to you guys. So just stick with us, and we'll promise we'll get you some good slot car goodness.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned. All right, guys. We'll catch you on the next one.
God. See you guys.
Feel
No, we need
nervous.
We need the apology for how long we've been off the air.
Seriously. It's like going on a date with somebody you haven't been on in a long time.
Oh, for crying out loud. Come on.